Hello, welcome to the third episode of The Moment. This time I've got 3 stories from around the region, 2 from Northumberland and 1 from Newcastle. I'm going to be talking about a food bank in Hexham that's had to reach out for help. I'm also going to be talking about a pioneering traffic light system that's being developed at Newcastle University. And the last story is about an open day from last Tuesday at Maersk in Blyth to get people interested in joining the wind energy industry. But for right now, let's take a look at our first story, which comes out of Hexham. So, the West Northumberland Food Bank had been struggling to meet demand recently, as they felt a huge spike in people needing their services. Now, the food bank isn't just there for homeless people. According to their Facebook page, they help out people who are unemployed, ill, in debt, or have had changes to their benefits, which means that they can't put food on the table. So they help out a broad range of situations, and the food bank finding themselves in need of donations is detrimental to all those people who rely on them. But it's also worth pointing out that people can't just turn up to a food bank. There's a sort of referral system, and according to the Trussell Trust, who operate food banks across the country, quote, each food bank works with different frontline professionals, such as doctors, health visitors, and social workers who make referrals to the food bank using a voucher. So that's sort of how the situation works with the majority of food banks. So I spoke to Ian Cave, who's a member of Tyndale Lions, and Tyndale Lions are a group of volunteers who help out charities and other good causes that are in need of assistance, and they give their time and money to help out those charities. And so I asked him exactly how they helped out the food bank and how they found out that it needed help in the first place.
Well, we assist the food bank basically on a weekly basis, either by collecting goods from stores like Tesco where people donate goods. We pick them up and take them to the distribution centre in Hexham, or we actually assist in what they call packing and stacking. So we stack food that's brought in, donations that are brought in, and then we pack them into the bags that go out to the various distribution points for the deserving families. So we've worked with the food bank since really its inception by doing just that. So it's, again, hands-on or by donations. And when we were packing recently, our members noticed a big drop in the stocks that were there, and there'd been a big spike in demand in January, over 30% over last year, and they were getting quite concerned because the basics supplies were very, very low. We had a meeting and decided that we needed to pump some money into buying goods, and spoke to the food bank, and they decided that they would like to approach one of the local supermarkets, which in this case was Aldi, who agreed to order the food for them, and then we collect it. And that's the article that appeared in the Hexham Courant.
So I then went on to ask Ian in what other ways the Tyndale Lions had helped out the food bank before, and not just through these larger donations.
We've given them over the years money towards the telephone rental when that started, and then we used to give a monthly sum just so they could go out and buy food if there was any real shortages. As an example, if they didn't have any long life milk which they distribute, then we would give them cash that they could use to go out and buy extra milk so they could fulfill orders.
So now let's move on to the second story, which comes from Newcastle University, where a group of researchers are working on a new traffic light system. Now, this is billed as a smart traffic light system, and the idea of this is that these traffic lights will be able to help smooth out traffic flow and reduce congestion. So it's quite an interesting concept, and I went along to Newcastle University to speak to Phil Blythe, who's a professor of intelligent transport systems and also one of the people involved in the project, to talk to him about what this program entails.
The way it works is equipped vehicles are detected by the traffic lights around them, and different types of equipped vehicles may have different access rights and priorities. So for example, the fleet of vehicles we were testing with this initially on the corridor in Heaton were passenger transport ambulances, people that take patients to hospital, not the blue light ambulances that do emergencies. And so when they approach the lights on Chillingham Road and Benton Road, the traffic lights around there know that vehicle's there. They talk to each other. The lights will stay green to allow the vehicle to travel through, but if the lights are already red, they'll be hurried to green and held on green to enable the vehicles to go through. And that's just one example of what it can do. In that way, it's giving patients a more smooth, more comfortable journey, and obviously probably get to the hospital a little quicker. But we've designed it for all sorts of other reasons, such as reducing traffic emissions and fuel use. So for vehicles that use a lot of fuel, and if they have to stop and then accelerate and start again, they expend a lot of traffic fumes. We're trying to look at giving those priority in certain lights, and so the second corridor, the one that's being installed in Gosforth, from Gosforth High Street into the centre of Newcastle, that's looking at giving buses priority if they're running behind schedule.
So would this be something rolled out for lots of different vehicles? Would people be able to have this in their cars? Or?
That's the idea in the long term. It comes under a term called connected vehicles, or CITS, Connected Intelligent Transport Systems, and the Department for Transport is very keen on this technology to make traffic management smarter. So they're funding a number of corridors. This is the two in Newcastle are the first ones in the UK, so we're the pioneers, but they're also funding a big one from Greenwich in London along the A2, M2 to the ports of Dover and the like. And the thought is that you can manage your transport network better, you can give certain vehicles priority, but you can also do other things like manage parking, manage the stacking of heavy goods vehicles in the case of around Dover if there's a ferry strike or bad weather, and just make the whole road transport network more intelligent, and thus it should have impacts on improving congestion, but also safety. Safety in a number of ways. The safety use case we're implementing in Newcastle is we're giving cyclists tags that they can wear on their helmets or on their clothing, and the vehicles equipped with the CITS system will actually be told that there are vulnerable road users, cyclists around, to warn the drivers to look out for them and be careful. But there's all sorts of other things you can do once you can connect the infrastructure and the vehicles together. And also it's like the foundation, the precursor to automated vehicles as well.
So, just at first glance, this sounds like a very good idea. I mean, if this kind of thing were to be rolled out nationwide, it would certainly help emergency services hugely, for example. And anybody who gets the bus into Newcastle and has to go through Gosforth in the mornings can tell you how bad the congestion can be at that time of the day. But my concern is that, as with other technology, people may end up relying on this new system rather than using their own instincts as drivers. And I asked Professor Blythe about this concern.
Technology tends to, in many cases, make people less aware of their own environment and how they do things. You think about GPS as a way of navigating. How many young people, for example, now could actually read a paper map and get themselves from A to B? So there is a challenge there, and one of the challenges is to go out and do trials in a safe and controlled environment to actually understand what the issues are of adoption, acceptance, behaviour, understanding of the system, and whether potentially it does have any negative safety connotations. And there's only so much of that you can do academically by just thinking about it and writing things down on paper. The best way is to test the technology in situ, and then you really begin to understand what the challenges are, or what the opportunities and impacts are, and that's what we're doing.
So I think that response makes sense. I mean, he wasn't exactly going to say that it's a terrible idea, because it isn't. I think it's quite a good idea, and it certainly has a lot of staying power, I think. But we all know that technology itself can be distracting, and it's going to be interesting to see how they get around that particular problem. But of course, there is also the problem that pedestrians could be negatively affected as well, because while this system makes way for vulnerable road users like cyclists, for example, people randomly crossing the road may not be a factor in terms of the traffic lights algorithms. But of course, that kind of thing is conjecture, and I'm sure that's the type of thing that the researchers will be looking into as well. To finish, I asked the professor about whether Brexit might affect the longevity of the project, because this is an EU-funded project, and it's also been rolled out in other EU states as well. So I asked whether he thought this might be a problem.
No, Brexit may affect longer-term European funding, but what I would say is we've just literally in the last couple of months won another 4-year project with European funding to take this area further, develop new use cases, develop bigger corridors, so more traffic lights, more roads equipped with the equipment, and that's a 4-year project which will start in May. So I think in the long term Brexit may have an impact if it's not clear what it would mean for European researchers who work at the university. But I believe the government has underwritten any European research that's currently funded. So at least until the end of the current framework program for European research funding, which is called Horizon 2020, UK companies involved will get their funding, and if they don't get it from Europe, it'll be underwritten by government.
Okay, so now it's time to move on to the final story of the day. Maersk Training held an open day in Blyth last Tuesday, the 4th of April, and this was meant, according to the Northumberland Gazette, to highlight its course that helps people achieve the skills and training required to access the growing wind energy sector. So this is basically a course that's designed to help people who are over the age of 19 who are unemployed get a job in an industry that isn't under threat. And this is very good for the North East because, according to the Office of National Statistics, the current unemployment rate is 6.8%, which is the highest in the country. So this is definitely a very good opportunity for people in the area, because we have the Blyth offshore wind farm, and so it wouldn't be a case of people becoming skilled through this training course and then needing to look for work in other parts of the country because the jobs are already here. And Maersk are a large multinational company. They've got facilities everywhere from Dubai to Rio, and they're definitely invested in the Northeast. Their facility in North Shields has been here for 10 years already. So it's clearly not just something that's an impermanent thing. They clearly want to stay here long term, which is very good. And also, according to the story from the Gazette, more than 80% of delegates who go into this course find employment upon graduation. So it's definitely a very good opportunity, and I think it's a great thing for this area to be getting skilled people into industrial jobs again. And that's all for this episode. If you have any stories from your area that you'd like me to follow up, please tweet me at OliverTheMillio or post a comment below. I'll be back in a fortnight's time, but until then, I'm Oliver Ralph, and this is The Moment.